The Galactic Council, a conglomerate of the galaxy's most powerful and advanced species, sat atop the universe's power structure. Its members, mysterious, distant, and deeply entwined with the fate of billions, were accustomed to absolute control. From their massive citadel on the distant moon of Varix, the Council oversaw countless star systems, ensuring peace through a blend of diplomacy and overwhelming force. But in the Council's quest for order, they had underestimated something. One crucial detail: a human. A soldier. A sniper. On the war-torn planet of Kavara, amidst the shattered ruins of an ancient city, a human soldier lay wounded. His name was Captain Alex Mercer. Once a decorated marksman in the Earth Defense Force, Mercer had become a thorn in the side of the Galactic Council's empire. Despite humanity's relatively short history in the galaxy, Earth's fighters had proven tenacious, surviving under the most brutal conditions. Mercer had led countless resistance missions, sabotaging key Council operations, destabilizing their hold over critical systems. He had built a reputation as a ghost, a soldier who struck from the shadows, leaving no trace but death. The battle had been fierce, and now, alone and bleeding, Mercer barely clung to life. His arm was broken, a deep gash ran across his side, and his face was smeared with dirt and blood. The smoke from the recent firefight still lingered in the air, twisting in the wind like some silent, ominous specter. Yet, despite his state, Mercer had one advantage: he was a survivor. His surroundings, however, were unforgiving. The landscape of Kavara was a crumbling monument to a long-forgotten civilization, its jagged rock formations and decayed structures offering little shelter. The planet's atmosphere, thin and toxic, made it difficult to breathe. But Mercer had long since learned to adapt to any environment. He could feel the cold sweat trickling down his brow, his mind sharp despite his body's weakness. There was no time to rest. He could hear the faint hum of alien engines in the distance. Council forces were coming. They hadn't found him yet, but they were close. What they didn't know, what the Council had foolishly overlooked, was that Mercer wasn't just any soldier. He was a symbol of defiance against their oppressive reign. And that symbol had not been extinguished by a single wound. On Varix, in the heart of the Galactic Council citadel, a high-ranking assembly convened to discuss the ever-growing threat of the human resistance. Representatives of the Council's constituent species, each one seated at a vast circular table made of iridescent stone, argued with vehemence. There were the Eldrin, towering beings of metallic skin whose voices echoed with authority, the xenophobically inclined Astari, their segmented faces casting dark glances across the table, and the Viraki, a telepathic species, their thoughts rippling like an unseen current through the room. They all debated, but one thing was clear: the human resistance could not be ignored any longer. Mercer, in particular, is proving to be a problem. A low, gravelly voice rumbled from the Eldrin representative. His name was Tharak, the voice of reason in the Council's military arm. We've sent enough soldiers after him to fill a fleet, and yet he continues to evade capture. He's a ghost. Another voice, sharp and cold, cut through the murmurings. Lyra, the Viraki strategist, leaned forward, her multifaceted eyes glinting. Mercer may be elusive, but it is not his skill we should fear. It is the ripple effect he's creating. His actions embolden the humans. If he continues to escape us, it will fuel their rebellion. The resistance will grow stronger. The Council fell into silence. It was rare for anyone, let alone Lyra, to speak so candidly about the threat posed by a single individual. But she was right. Mercer wasn't just a skilled sniper. He had become a symbol, a beacon of resistance. And the more he evaded the Council's grasp, the more humans everywhere would rally to his cause. Tharak straightened, his enormous form casting a shadow across the table. Then let us finish this. One final mission, and we eliminate Mercer. We know he's injured, his movements are hindered. Send a squadron of our finest hunters. We'll bring him to Varix alive. If he's too much trouble, then we'll eliminate him, but we will not let him escape again. Lyra's thoughts flickered through the room like a subtle breeze. I disagree. Sending hunters is a waste of resources. Let us not forget that it was our underestimation of him that has led us here. Send a single unit. A surgical strike. Take him alive, but do not waste time. If he resists, you know what to do. A moment of tension hung in the air, thick with unspoken histories and grudges between the factions. Finally, the council nodded in agreement. One unit. One chance to end this. Back on Kavara, Mercer's mind raced. The sounds of engines were closer now. The council's elite soldiers were closing in, and he needed a plan. With his broken body and battered gear, it seemed impossible, but Mercer was nothing if not resourceful. A human, stranded in the wilderness of a hostile world, had little to rely on but instinct. And that instinct had saved his life more times than he could count. In the distance, the silhouette of a dropship appeared on the horizon. The council's forces were here. He needed to move quickly. There was no hiding anymore. The only way out now was through them. Mercer's hand gripped his rifle. He wouldn't go down without a fight. Not today. He wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting for the hope of every human that had ever been subjugated by the Galactic Council. Every person who had been forgotten, dismissed, or crushed by their iron grip. As the dropship descended, Mercer's lips curved into a grim smile. The Council had made a mistake. They had underestimated humanity, and they would pay for it. The first shot rang out. Mercer moved like a shadow through the jagged ruins of Kavara's ancient city. His body screamed for rest, but there was no time to indulge it. The dropship was still visible in the sky, circling as it lowered into the ruined sector, and Mercer knew that the Council's elite soldiers were disembarking. They would be searching for him, and they wouldn't stop until they found his corpse. But the sniper wasn't finished yet. Not by a long shot. The city's crumbling architecture offered little cover, yet Mercer had learned to use every inch of the terrain to his advantage. His mind, still sharp despite the fatigue, mapped out the landscape with precision. He could hear the distinct hum of alien footsteps, the chatter of soldiers as they fanned out in search of him. The Council's men were thorough, but they underestimated one thing: humans didn't give up easily. He stumbled through the debris, the sound of his own breath ragged and painful, but he pushed forward. There was no time to rest. His rifle, battered and worn, was his lifeline. His arm throbbed with each movement, and the wound at his side burned, but he focused. The sniper was always in control. He always had been. The soldiers grew closer, their movements calculated, efficient. Mercer had trained for this. It wasn't the first time he'd fought while injured. The difference now was that the stakes were higher. The resistance needed him. His survival was no longer a matter of personal will. It was the spark for something much bigger. He could feel it. Word of his exploits had spread across the galaxy, a whisper among the oppressed, a symbol that the Council was not invincible. But if he didn't escape this, if they killed him here on Kavara, the flame of rebellion would flicker and die. But that would not happen. Not if he could help it. He crouched behind a broken pillar, his eyes scanning the horizon. He could see them now, the Council soldiers, clad in black exosuits, their faces obscured by helmets. They moved in perfect formation, systematic in their search. But Mercer knew how to play the game. His breathing slowed, and he waited, letting the enemy come to him. Seconds passed, and then minutes, stretching like hours. Finally, they were in position. Mercer's finger tightened on the trigger. The first soldier, a young one by the look of his movements, turned just enough to expose a gap in his armor. Mercer's shot was precise, the bullet slicing through the air and finding its mark in the soldier's exposed throat. He collapsed, the sound of his body hitting the ground barely audible over the wind. The others didn't hear it. Not yet. The sniper didn't move. He didn't need to. The chaos that would follow was inevitable. It always was. The remaining soldiers would scatter, trying to find the source of the shot. They would be more cautious now, less confident. And that would give him the edge. Within moments, the search intensified. Mercer's eyes flicked over the terrain, noting their positions, predicting their next moves. He slid back into the shadows, staying out of sight, his pulse steady. The soldiers began to fan out, their tactics shifting. They were trying to flush him out. Mercer smiled to himself. They didn't realize it yet, but they were walking into his trap. He was the hunter now. He could hear their voices echoing off the stone ruins, their sharp commands. They were getting closer, but he had the upper hand. The sniper knew how to make an enemy feel as though they were the ones in control, until it was too late. Another soldier moved into his line of sight, stepping over a jagged pile of stone. His heavy boots hit the ground with a thud, but Mercer was already waiting. One quick motion, and the soldier's chest exploded in a shower of sparks. His body crumpled, the exosuit unable to withstand the sheer force of the sniper's shot. The remaining soldiers froze. For a brief, tense moment, no one moved. The silence that followed was deafening. But it didn't last. The hunt resumed, now with more urgency. The soldiers advanced, more carefully this time. They were now fully aware that Mercer was no ordinary man. He was something more, something dangerous. The dropship was now hovering low over the city, its engines thrumming with power. A squad of soldiers emerged from the hatch, their weapons raised. Mercer couldn't afford to wait any longer. His position was compromised, and the council would keep sending more troops until he was buried beneath their overwhelming firepower. He had to make his move. Mercer dropped down from his perch, rolling smoothly into a crouch as he sprinted toward a nearby alley. He moved quickly, barely making a sound as he ducked into the shadows. The soldiers had seen him, but they weren't fast enough. The sniper had already calculated his next move. He took the long route, weaving through the narrow streets, using the terrain to his advantage. Each corner he turned, each shadow he slipped into, brought him closer to his goal. His body screamed in pain, but Mercer pushed it aside. There would be time for that later. For now, he had to focus on getting out alive. The dropship continued its search overhead, but Mercer knew the council wouldn't be satisfied with simply finding him. They would want him alive, at least for now. They wanted him as a trophy. And that, Mercer knew, would be their mistake. He had no intention of being captured. By the time the sun began to dip below the horizon, Mercer had reached the outskirts of the city, where the dense jungle would provide the cover he needed. The soldiers weren't far behind, but Mercer had a plan. The jungle would swallow him whole, and in the dense underbrush, he would disappear. He felt it then, a flicker of hope, sharp and bright. The resistance was out there, waiting for his signal. They would come for him. And when they did, the council would learn the price of underestimating humanity. Mercer reached the tree line, his breath ragged but steady. He glanced over his shoulder one last time, the hum of the dropship still faint in the distance. They would come for him, but he would be ready. He always was. As the jungle closed in around him, the sniper melted into the shadows, a ghost once more. And the hunt continued, but this time, it was no longer just for him. It was for everyone. The Galactic Council had underestimated the human sniper, and now, its leadership was scrambling. A single man, wounded and alone, had outwitted some of their finest soldiers. The battle for Kavara, though far from over, had already shifted. The Council had made a mistake, a grave one, and the repercussions were just beginning to unfold. In the command center of the Varick Citadel, the Council's highest-ranking officials convened once more, their sharp eyes narrowed in contemplation. The mood was tense, the air thick with frustration and concern. Across the massive holographic table, the faces of alien leaders flickered, their thoughts collectively focused on the human menace who had evaded them. Tharek, the towering Eldrin strategist, spoke first. This is no longer a matter of simple rebellion. We've made a mistake by allowing him to live. He's more than just a soldier. He's a symbol now. Mercer has become the face of the human resistance. If we do not end this now, we risk a much larger revolt. Lyra, the Viraki tactician, agreed. He is the spark of something we cannot yet see fully, but it is already spreading. If the humans believe they can defeat us, the consequences will be far-reaching. The resistance will grow beyond Mercer, beyond this single planet. It will become a movement. We cannot allow that. There was a moment of silence as the council members digested the gravity of the situation. The resistance had always been a nuisance, something they could deal with by obliterating a few cells here and there. But Mercer was different. He was more than a nuisance. He was a catalyst, and his survival had already begun to shift the balance of power. Tharek's eyes gleamed with cold resolve. We will send the hunter elite. No more mistakes. We will take him alive, or if necessary, we will ensure his final death is painful and absolute. Lyra hesitated for a moment, her multifaceted eyes narrowing. I would suggest caution. The last time we underestimated him, we lost valuable personnel. If we are to send the hunter elite, we must be prepared for more than a simple capture. The Eldrin general nodded. Very well. Prepare the team. We will ensure the mission's success. The Council can no longer afford to allow a single human to defy us. Meanwhile, on the surface of Kavara, Mercer had already begun his counteroffensive. The jungle was his ally, its thick foliage providing the cover he needed. He had disappeared into it like a shadow, leaving the soldiers who pursued him scrambling in frustration. Mercer's mind, always calculating, had already mapped his next move. He was injured, but not helpless. He could feel his body urging him to rest, but the thought of the human resistance gave him strength. If he survived this, if he could make it through, the resistance would rise in full force. The Council couldn't keep their grip on the galaxy forever. Mercer's communication device, damaged but still functional, hummed softly in his ear. His fingers found the small device, and he activated it with a swift motion. A message blinked on the screen, a simple but crucial communication from his allies. The message was brief, a single word: reinforcements. He exhaled slowly, the tension in his chest loosening just a fraction. His escape had been close, but now, with reinforcements on the way, he had a real chance. The resistance was moving, and with their help, he could strike back. Kavara would be the first blow in what could be the beginning of the end for the Council. As he moved deeper into the jungle, weaving through the undergrowth, Mercer's mind returned to the strategy at hand. He needed to take out the remaining Council forces on the planet and then get off-world. It was too dangerous to stay here for long, but he needed more than just escape. He needed a statement. He needed to show the galaxy that the Council could be beaten, that even a single human could change the course of history. But the hunter elite was on the way. He had no illusions about the danger they posed. The hunter elite were the best of the best, the galaxy's most feared operatives, and they had been sent specifically for him. He would have to outthink them, outlast them. The jungle would help, but only if he stayed one step ahead. Mercer adjusted his rifle, checking its integrity, making sure it was ready. His body protested, but his mind stayed focused. The enemy was coming, and he wasn't going to let them catch him. Not now. Not when everything was in motion. Hours later, as night fell, Mercer's ears caught the soft hum of engines in the distance. The hunter elite had arrived. Their dropships moved in silently, the air around them crackling with energy. They had been trained for this: stealth, precision, and lethality. Mercer had only minutes to prepare. He crouched low, his form blending with the darkened jungle, every sense on high alert. The slightest noise could betray him now. The elite were moving in from multiple directions, their movements eerily coordinated. Mercer could almost feel them closing in, their presence like a storm on the horizon. But he had no intention of being caught in the open. He needed them to think he was somewhere else. He needed to mislead them. A flicker of movement caught his eye. One of the elite was nearby, scanning the trees with a thermal imager. Mercer's heart rate spiked, but his breathing remained steady. The soldier was getting closer. Too close. He knew the moment the man stepped into the open, the hunt would begin. Mercer's finger hovered over the trigger. He could take the shot now, drop the elite before he had a chance to react. But that would only draw attention. If Mercer was to survive, he needed to be patient. He needed to make them come to him. The soldier stopped, his thermal scope sweeping the area, scanning the underbrush, but Mercer remained perfectly still. The tension in the air was palpable, a moment stretched to its breaking point. The elite moved on, unaware of the danger lying in wait. Mercer allowed himself a breath of relief. But that relief was short-lived. The real hunt had just begun. The jungle was quiet, deceptively so. The low hum of distant engines had faded, leaving only the soft rustle of the wind through the trees and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. Mercer was deep in the underbrush, his pulse steady, his breathing controlled. He knew the hunter elite were still close, still moving, their deadly presence looming just beyond his reach. He had evaded them for now, but he couldn't afford to relax. The game had only begun. He checked his rifle again, ensuring the sights were aligned, his fingers brushing over the cold metal. His body was sore, worn from hours of constant movement and the brutal combat before that. Yet, as always, his mind remained sharp, calculating every possible move. The elite were known for their precision, their ability to hunt down their target with ruthless efficiency. But Mercer had something they didn't, the element of unpredictability. The snap of a branch behind him made him freeze, his heart leaping into his throat. He turned slowly, his senses on high alert. His eyes scanned the dense foliage, catching the faintest glimpse of movement in the shadows. A figure. A soldier, clad in the black exosuit of the elite. He was close, too close. Mercer didn't hesitate. He dropped to the ground, rolling silently into a concealed position behind a thick tree trunk. His breath slowed, his eyes narrowing as he waited. The elite soldier stepped forward, his steps confident but cautious, his rifle at the ready. Mercer could hear him, feel the vibrations in the air as he moved, each step a beat in the drum of the hunt. Mercer's finger hovered over the trigger. The shot was perfect. One clean hit, and the soldier would drop, no sound, no warning. But this wasn't the time. The moment wasn't right. He needed to outsmart them, to make them think they had the upper hand. The soldier paused, scanning the area with a thermal scope. Mercer's chest tightened as the soldier's gaze swept across the tree where he hid. It was a matter of inches. One wrong move, one shift in position, and the game would be over. The soldier stepped closer, his helmet turning this way and that, seemingly aware of something but unable to pinpoint it. Mercer's breath held, a bead of sweat trailing down his neck. This was it. The edge of the knife. Suddenly, the soldier moved on. His focus was diverted elsewhere, drawn by some sound or movement that Mercer had missed. The sniper allowed himself one long exhale. It was a close call, but he had won this round. For now, he was safe. The elite were not far behind, though, and the hunt would continue until Mercer was either dead or captured. He had no illusions about that. The stakes had never been higher. The council had invested too much into this operation. They would stop at nothing to see him brought to justice, or silence. But Mercer had his own plans. The resistance needed him alive, and he would do whatever it took to stay that way. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was a symbol, the face of defiance against the endless tyranny of the Galactic Council. If he fell, so did the dream of freedom. He wouldn't let that happen. The jungle began to darken as the night wore on, the sky above a canvas of black and violet. Mercer moved swiftly, his senses heightened as the temperature dropped. The sound of the distant dropships was a constant reminder of the danger that loomed. They were out there, somewhere. The hunter elite, relentless and unyielding, would find him eventually. But Mercer had a plan. He wasn't going to run forever. He had to strike. The terrain ahead opened up, revealing a clearing that led to a small, abandoned facility. It had been a military base once, long since abandoned and forgotten by the Council. Mercer had stumbled upon it weeks ago while on another mission. It was the perfect place to make his stand. The facility had an old comms tower, just what he needed to contact the resistance and give them the signal to move in. They had to know he was still alive, that there was still hope. As he made his way toward the facility, the air grew heavier, the tension palpable. He could almost hear the footsteps of the elite behind him, feel their eyes searching, waiting for the moment when they would strike. The clearing was just ahead, but Mercer didn't dare look back. If he did, he might give himself away. The facility loomed in front of him, its broken windows and rusted walls standing like a silent sentinel against the darkening sky. Mercer moved quickly, slipping inside through a gap in the outer fence. The comms tower was just beyond the main building, and once he reached it, he could make contact with the resistance. Time was running out, though. He could feel the weight of it pressing down on him. The elite were closing in. A crackle over his comms interrupted his thoughts. A voice, barely audible, whispered through the static. "Mercer, we're in position." The resistance is ready. You just need to hold on. Mercer's heart lifted slightly. His team was out there. The resistance was coming. All he had to do now was survive long enough to give them a chance. The moment he reached the comms tower, Mercer crouched low behind its rusted support beams, his rifle at the ready. He could feel the tension building, a quiet storm gathering in the distance. The Hunter elite were getting closer, and Mercer's time was running out. He activated the comms device with a quick flick of his wrist, sending out the signal that would bring the resistance to his side. But just as he pressed the final button, the world exploded into chaos. The elite had found him. They emerged from the shadows, their exosuits gleaming in the dim light, their weapons aimed directly at him. Mercer's hand tightened around his rifle, but he knew the fight was over. He had one shot, one final chance to escape or make a stand. But in that moment, as the elite soldiers closed in, Mercer realized something. The fight wasn't just his anymore. It was the fight of every human who had ever suffered under the Council's rule. And even if they killed him here, they couldn't kill the fire he had started. Mercer's finger hovered over the trigger, and then, in one swift motion, he turned and ran.